On Halloween night in 2003, a masked figure stood outside a quiet home in northern England holding a shotgun. Inside that house was a woman who had no idea that someone obsessed with destroying her life was just inches from her front door. But to understand how it got to that moment, you have to start a year earlier. Heather was 46 years old, living alone in England and working as a psychotherapist. On paper, she was someone who helped people untangle their trauma. She understood behavior, she understood boundaries, she understood obsession, or at least she was supposed to. Privately, Heather's life was far less stable than the calm image she presented to clients. She drank heavily, she used cocaine, and inside her home she kept an unsettling collection of weapons, knives, swords, even firearms, items that felt less like hobbies and more like extensions of something darker simmering underneath. In 2002, Heather made what seemed like a simple decision. She owned 2 dogs, and her busy lifestyle made it difficult to care for them properly. So she placed an ad in a local magazine looking for a live-in dog sitter, someone who would move into her home and take full responsibility for the animals. That ad would change everything. A 31-year-old man named Adrain responded. Adrain was charismatic, physically fit, and confident. He had once worked as a stripper, a detail that hinted at both his charm and his ability to read people. Now, he was simply looking for steady work. The arrangement seemed straightforward, free accommodation in exchange for caring for the dogs. Heather hired him almost immediately. At first, the situation felt convenient. Adrain moved into her house. He cared for the dogs. They shared space, meals, conversation, and before long, the lines blurred. What began as an employer-employee arrangement turned romantic. The attraction was mutual. The relationship escalated quickly. They were living together, sleeping together in daily life within weeks. But it didn't take long for Adrain to notice things that unsettled him. Heather drank constantly. Some days she seemed functional. Other days she was volatile. Cocaine use intensified her mood swings. Small disagreements could turn explosive. Arguments felt disproportionate, theatrical, almost performative. Then there were the weapons. Adrain would later describe moments when Heather handled them during heated exchanges, not always directly threatening him, but close enough that the message was unmistakable. She liked control, she liked intimidation, and she didn't hide it. The home began to feel less like a workplace and more like a trap. 3 weeks into the job, Adrain had made up his mind. He needed to leave. But leaving Heather was not simple. When he told her he wanted out, she didn't cry. She didn't plead. She threatened. If he left her, she said, she would find him wherever he went. She would not let him disappear. He belonged there. There was something in her tone that made him believe she meant it. So Adrain stayed, at least for the moment. He continued caring for the dogs, continued sharing the house, continued waiting for an opportunity, and then one came. Heather enrolled in a 4-month screenwriting course in New York City. She would be gone for an extended period. The second she left England, Adrain packed his things. He didn't leave a dramatic note. He didn't announce it. He simply disappeared and relocated to the greater Manchester area, hoping distance would be enough. For a few days, there was silence. Then Heather found out. From New York, the calls began. Over and over. Sometimes she sobbed, saying she loved him. Other times she raged, accusing him of betrayal. She managed to get his new address. Letters followed, emotional, manipulative, sometimes seductive. Adrain didn't respond. He wanted peace. He wanted normalcy. He wanted a life that didn't feel like walking on glass. What he didn't understand yet was that to Heather, this wasn't a breakup. It was a declaration of war, and she was only just getting started. Then he met Diane. Diane was a single mother of 2, practical, grounded, protective of her children. She wasn't looking for chaos. She was looking for stability. And in Adrain, she saw someone trying to start over. Their relationship moved quickly, but it felt healthy, calm, ordinary. For the first time in months, Adrain felt safe, until Heather found out. No one ever figured out how she got the information, but she did. And the shift was immediate. The calls turned vicious. Heather began verbally attacking Adrain, tearing into his character, accusing him of cheating, lying, manipulating. Then she turned her focus toward Diane. She called Diane a prostitute, claimed she was unfit to raise her children, threatened to deal with her. It was cold, controlled, strategic. Heather had moved past heartbreak. Now she was hunting. She somehow obtained their address. She sent letters. She left voicemails. Then the stalking escalated. Diane began noticing a car parked down the street for long periods. She felt watched, walking her children to school. On more than one occasion, someone took photographs of the kids from a distance. Heather wasn't just targeting Adrain anymore. She was circling his new life. In 2003, the harassment evolved into something even more damaging. Police began showing up at Diane's home. Anonymous reports had been filed accusing Adrain and Diane of abusing the children. The allegations were specific, detailed, disturbing. But every investigation found the same result: nothing. No evidence, no signs of harm, no credible basis. Still, each visit damaged behind. Neighbors whispering, children confused, Diane humiliated. Heather understood something critical. If she couldn't control Adrain emotionally, she could destabilize him socially. Finally, Adrain made a difficult decision. He moved out temporarily and stayed with a friend. The plan was simple. If Heather believed the relationship was over, maybe she would lose interest. And strangely, it worked. The calls stopped. The letters stopped. The police reports stopped. Silence. For the first time in over a year, everything went quiet. But silence from someone like Heather wasn't peace. It was preparation. While Adrain believed distance had finally defeated obsession, Heather had simply redirected it. She no longer wanted him back. She wanted revenge. And in her mind, revenge meant removing the obstacle permanently. Diane wasn't just a rival. She was the reason Adrain had chosen someone else. So Heather began constructing a plan. Not emotional, not impulsive, deliberate, calculated. She would go to Diane's home. She would kill her. And she would make it look like Adrain did it. The more she thought about it, the more perfect it seemed. She would wear his clothes. She would disguise herself. And she would choose the one night of the year when no one questions a mask: Halloween. On Halloween night, a disguise wasn't suspicious. It was expected. October 31st, 2003. Around 1:30 in the morning, Heather drove slowly into Diane's neighborhood. The streets were quiet. Decorations still hung from houses, pumpkins dimly glowing on porches. She parked, got out, picked up the shotgun, and walked toward Diane's front door. She began knocking. Hard, the sound echoed through the sleeping street. Inside, Diane woke up disoriented. 1:30 a.m., no one normal knocks at that hour. She walked to the door but didn't open it. Instead, she looked through the peephole. All she could see was a masked figure standing still on her porch, not moving, not speaking, just waiting. Diane didn't unlock the door. Outside, Heather kept knocking. Harder, louder. The noise carried next door. A man named Bob, Diane's neighbor, woke up and stepped outside to investigate. He saw a costumed figure aggressively pounding on Diane's door. He shouted for the person to stop. Heather turned toward him. He told her to leave. She told him to mind his own business. The confrontation escalated quickly, raised voices cutting through the quiet street. Then Bob made a split-second decision. He lunged forward and grabbed the mask. It came off. And in that moment, everything collapsed. Heather fired. The blast shattered the silence. Bob fell. Heather stood frozen for a fraction of a second, the reality of what she had just done breaking through the fantasy of her plan. This wasn't staged revenge anymore. This was murder. Panic took over. She ran back to her car, shotgun still inside, and drove away from the scene. But adrenaline doesn't always make people smarter. It makes them erratic. Instead of speeding, she drove unusually slow, cautious, tense, hyper-aware. It was so abnormal that a nearby police officer noticed immediately. He pulled her over. When he approached the vehicle, what he saw erased any doubt. There was a shotgun inside. There were bloodstains. There was a woman shaking behind the wheel. Heather was arrested on the spot. The plan that had lived so vividly in her mind for months had unraveled in less than 5 minutes. Bob died from the gunshot wound. Diane survived, not because Heather changed her mind, but because a locked door and a vigilant neighbor disrupted the fantasy. At trial, the prosecution laid out the pattern clearly: harassment, stalking, false allegations, escalating threats, and finally premeditated violence. Heather was found guilty. She was sentenced to life in prison.